Welcome to another episode of Plain Injured. Thanks for joining and being part of our community. I'm here with a great friend of mine, a brother from another mother. I think we've been in life, in business, doing life for a decade almost now, if not
Yeah.
more. Frank Nyantekyi. Frank, what is going on, man?
What's going on, Mason? It's good to be on. It's good to be able to tap into the Plain and Jit podcast
Yeah,
finally.
you bet, man. Well, Frank comes from a pretty unique background. So, Frank, maybe you want to share a little bit of this. But one of the things that's just kind of melded us together is our entrepreneurial kind of spirit, our drive to want
Mhm.
to create a good family life, good relationships in our life, make an impact, spread the good of humanity, and our faith. We share a similar faith background. So, Frank, why don't you share a little bit of how you were raised, where you came from, and some of that, and then we'll dive into some other topics. Excited to chat with you.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, this is not a Wisconsin accent. I was born and raised in Ghana. I did high school in England, and then I moved to the US to do my undergrad and grad school. A little bit about my early journey. So my dad died before I was born. And the uniqueness of that was that my mom never allowed that to stop her. So I've actually never seen my mom work a normal job, like 9 to 5. She's always like run a business. So it's really unique to see that um, when I was young. And then when I moved to the US, it's so weird because normally people move here for a better life. But then when you get into the 9 to 5, it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm making good money, and you feel sufficient and satisfied. And I almost fell into that trap until I connected with you because I had seen what my mom had done in the past, um, came here, got comfortable, and then just that drive and connecting with other people that run businesses it was kind of like a reinvention of myself to feel like, oh, this is something I really wanted to do earlier on. What has taken so long to get here? Um, and it was probably the season I was in. I was in grad school then. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of my background. Today, I work as a project manager in a large insurance company. Have 2 kids, married. Yeah, I've done everything that normally is expected, right? Go to school, go to grad school, get married, live, make good income. I think for me, though, something that I've found to be very important is the need to grow and to be more and to be able to make an impact.
Mm.
Um, so that's a little bit of my journey.
Yeah. Can I ask you another question? Just
Yeah.
it's valuable for people to hear. When I met you, you were a single dude, going to school, working. And, so I've seen you go from single dude to dating to engaged to married to kids. Like we've known each other that long. In fact, we were at your wedding. We were there when both your kids were born. Like we've been just involved in a lot of those areas. And along that journey, you've always had a career of some kind, and you've definitely grown a lot in your career, but you've also always had something going on the side in actually multiple dimensions. Because not only are you running something here in the US that you've scaled a $250,000 venture in e-commerce, which you'll never tell people, so I'm going to tell them. And then you also do business, help your mom with business back in Ghana. So
Yeah.
just give us a little bit of where does that come from? Like, what's the drive? What's the motivation through all those seasons of life to stay so consistent in that and not kind of start to kind of rest on the comfort of, hey, I'm making good money. And what's been that motivation? Because I think a lot of people from the US who are born here, they they tend to, I just see this, I observe this, and I could be wrong, but I just see a lot of people who travel from a different country to come here for a better life tend to be the ones who have more ambition, and they leverage what's here and what's available more than others. So any thoughts you have on any of that?
Yeah, I think different seasons have provided different motivations. So coming from Ghana and watching my mom run businesses, it just made sense. It's like, okay, she ran a business. I was able to go to private school in the UK. It was as a function of her running businesses, she paid for my undergrad and I think most of my grad school as well. If I want to be able to provide a certain level of lifestyle for my kids, there is no better version to copy. It's like she did that from a third world country and provided all of those. But then also another point of motivation, um, I had kids and it's once you have kids and you have children and you have a family, you move from a sense of I to what do I do to protect my family? In work, and you realize that, and huge wake up call. I've been laid off twice in 4 years. From
Mm.
2020 to 2024, I was laid off twice. There is no greater awakening than
Mhm.
being laid off, having a family with two kids, navigating that.
So true.
So all of those just it made it clear to me that not having something on the side is almost irresponsible. That is, I mean, not everybody has to feel that way, which is fine. Some of us, I think also at times there is a fear of what if things don't work out?
Right.
What if things don't work out? What if I invest a lot and things don't work out? I think for me, I always saw that different because I saw my mom start a cleaning business from zero to have over 30 employees, to shrink. I saw my parents run businesses where my dad went to a BMW dealership, bought a 3 Series with cash, and then 5 to 10 years later, they were bankrupt. So I've seen all those ups and downs. So it's like, it's normal that at times you will have success. One thing I've done better is really reimagine that as like, what am I learning through the process?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm always looking to make an impact.
Yeah.
That's really one of the things that have driven me. But what about like I have a question for you. What are some of the you've been running a business for over 10 years. You've had success both in the entrepreneurial realm and then also in your career. What are some of the biggest myths about starting a business?
Yeah. Great question. I think there's a handful of things, especially in today's age, that people are challenged with. Number one is interesting and kind of a paradigm shift. There's too much information.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, when it comes to entrepreneurship, as you know, Frank, you need to go do more than you need to just get educated. The ratio of education and doing has to be pretty lopsided, meaning you got to take a lot of action and fail a lot, fail fast, and you need to get educated along the way. So that's myth number one.
mm,
Myth number two is I think with social media and all that's out there is that there's a silver bullet waiting for you. There's a get rich, and I don't actually. It's kind of I recently changed my perspective on this through some conversations with my mentor Frank, but I think that you should get rich quick. I think you should build wealth quickly in your life because you and I both know you buy your life back then.
mm,
You get it sooner. You get to spend more time with your family, your kids, the people you love. So, I think get wealth quick, not maybe get rich quick, because I think there's a difference there. But,
mm,
um, but what I think this challenge is that we're looking for the silver bullet or the quick fix. And here's what you and I both know, and that we've experienced is that anything successful takes a decade of effort. So that's number two. Number
mm,
three is I think most people, when they hear starting a business, their brain goes to 40, 50, 60, 100 hour a week work weeks, trading your life for it, giving everything you got, every penny of savings, going into debt, taking out a loan. And that's just something I've never done. That's when we've been guiding you guys. That's something we've never recommended you do. In fact, we build everything. We've never taken out a loan. You've never taken out a loan for things we've helped you in e-commerce, and we just recommend you go low cost and you use sweat equity. And we scaled everything 10, 15, 20 hours a week. That's about amount of effort we put in. Never
mm,
sacrificed our day jobs, build things in the evenings and weekends. and stayed consistent. And I think the biggest thing is consistency through all of that. So that's another factor. And then the last thing I'd say is kind of tied into the information is there's just a lot of noise.
Mm,
And typically the more noisy an industry is, the more limelight it gets, and the more people are selling a bag of goods. So right now it's in e-commerce. That's a big one. Um, it might be through, kind of cryptocurrency. That's a big
hmm
noisy space right now. And typically, the more noise, people are kind of just creating false facades of what success and the reality is. And my wife and I would be the first to tell you that our key to success in our venture in e-commerce and what we've helped you guys kind of build had nothing to do with the internet and a program and like a YouTube video. It had everything to do with the relationships we established in our life and executing on a plan. And um,
mm.
and it took time. It took a lot of time over years, but that's it. And then I think the principle behind starting something on the side, and then I'll
I was just going to ask you to double click on that, like the why behind why it's important
the
to do
principle
something.
behind it is, yeah, that you, in our opinion, if you're going to build something outside of your career, you build something that's going to produce a different kind of money
Mm,
than your job would produce. So, for example, your mom's cleaning business, for Frank to go start a cleaning business in the US, just gave himself another job,
yes.
right? Now, Frank gets that cleaning business, the 30, 40, 50, 100 employees. Hey, now it becomes something where he can potentially remove himself from it. But to get it to scale that way is pretty difficult. So when we recommend somebody start something on the side, they think, what is a system that I can build, or how can I automate this? I want to start something that over time I can remove myself from, and that
Mm.
I'm not the magic. So are you building a business that owns you, or are you building a business that you own it eventually? Is the
Could you
question.
speak more to why it's important to think this way? Like why you don't want something to, in starting something, you don't want it to become just another job. I think there is a lot of, I wouldn't say noise, but there's a lot of discussion around entrepreneurship out there, and people get stuck in that.
Yeah, well, because I think the world's teaching, if I'm understanding your question correctly, Frank, and please like tell me to pivot here to a different idea, but a lot of people are told find something you're passionate to do, passionate about, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Hmm
And while that may be true for some, I think most people, it's not. And what I wanted to create was I wanted to create something that as I'm building it, it's giving me more time in my life.
Mm,
So here's a simple example, or a simple kind of math equation. If your expenses are, let's say, $5,000 a month,
hmm
and your job, you make, let's say, $8,000 a month. So your net cash flow is $3,000 a month from that, right?
Yeah.
Your net cash flow based off of expenses. So you're cash flowing $3,000 a month. So if you lose your job and you have 1 month of pay, you can live without a job for 1 month. You're 1 month financially free, potentially.
Yes.
Or actually, it would take you 2 months to become financially free because you need $6,000 to cover the $5,000, so 2 months. Okay. So that's kind of a job, but that's all you got. If I build something on the side, and let's say it takes me 5, 10 years, but eventually it produces $5,000 of of cash flow through my side venture, and I'm still working my full-time job, that covers my expenses now for my job, from my living expenses. So now I have my job income at $8,000 a month. Plus, I have my business income at $5,000 a month, which covers all my expenses. I just became financially free with a job.
Mm,
Now, what my decision point becomes is how much money do I want extra? Now I get my side venture to $8,000 a month and it's residualized. I remove myself from my job. I'm at this exact same spot, and you can go one from one. Here's the last thing I'll say. One of the things that you're working on beautifully, you and your wife and your kids, is building a money machine. And this is
mm,
actually a book that was written, but you're building a money machine. Why? You guys are fully vested in 401ks, Roth IRAs. You guys have a business in Africa you're investing in. You have a business here in e-commerce you're investing in. You have your job income. Okay. Um, so that's right there. I just named four different sources of income you guys have. So, God forbid something happened to Frank and his ability to produce at his job, you can now turn on one of the other machines for your family, flip the switch. So it's not linear. I say this often, but starting a side venture is not for people who just want to quit their day job. It's
Mm.
also for people to have a to have an insurance plan in case a job quits you. Say that
Uh,
again.
Go
Having a
ahead.
job or
Hmm.
having a side venture is not for just for people who want to quit their day job. It's also an insurance plan in case a job quits you.
What have you seen as one of the setbacks or blockers that stops people to imagine themselves or think about the things this way? Because I think a lot of times people are like, well, it's not for me, or I'm happy where I'm at. Why is having an insurance important? This insurance policy on the side important?
To be frank with Frank, such an American term, English term that doesn't make sense. Uh,
What have you seen of like the way that what blocks people from thinking this way?
they think there's security in a job.
Mm,
They think jobs provide security, and people rest in consistency. And when something is paying you consistently, it's comfortable. It's like right now, if you get in your car and turn it on and drive, it's going to work for most people. Like they're expecting their car is just going to always run. And then one day they get in a car and it doesn't turn on and it doesn't work. And if they
mm,
weren't planning for it, they're going in $30,000 of debt or $20,000 of debt because they don't have any money set aside for it. So at some point, the reality is, the truth is, you experienced this twice, you said earlier.
yes.
You're going to lose your job and you're replaceable. Um, One of the other individuals that my wife and I guide, Frank, who you have a great relationship with, he's leaving his corporate career at the end of this year. November 14th is his retirement day. His wife has already gone. They have two little kids, sorry, and he's leaving his corporate job. He's a super high level, just a couple layers below a CEO at a big Fortune 50 company, and he's one of the highest like recognized employees there. And I was asking him the other day, I was like, so how are you feeling about leaving? He's like, dude, it's crazy. He's like, but the reality is they're going to replace me in a matter of a month. He said, even when I'm gone, I'm replaceable. And so that's a paradigm that I think we just have to come to terms with. And here's a really great question for most of us. What was your raise? Most of us we're in the raise season. What was your raise this year? Most of
I
us have
already know what it's gonna be. It's gonna be
3%.
like 2 to 3%,
Yeah. What was the inflation last year?
like 7 to 9, I think.
That means if let's call it seven. That means you lost if you had a 3% raise, you just lost 4% of your income last year.
Hmm.
Gone without even doing anything. So how do you offset 4%? Well, you go build something on the side. The only way to grow uh, wealth in today's world is you have to build something for yourself, is my opinion. That's just the only way to do it.
As a student, about to graduate, as a husband, wife, couple that is looking to transition, what is the kind of mindset shift that is required
Hmm.
in your experience?
Firm on the outcome, flexible on the path.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is
tell me more. Yeah.
I was not, and you were the same way. You and I both approached e-commerce not because we were passionate about it. We loved it. We were going to be so good at it. We were like just meant for it. None of that. The reason you and I approached that space was because we saw the results it could produce in our life. We understood the asset it could create. And we wanted
Mm,
what we were passionate about was the life it could help us create and the impact we could make through it on our family and on others. Like that's it. So number one, you have to be that. You have to be outcome focused. Number two, I believe if you're a couple, you have to be on the same page. You
mm.
both have to be active entrepreneurs building something. No. But Frank, you and Laura are on the same page. You know where you want to go. You know what your values are. You know what's most important for your family. She supports you in what you do. So there's a level of being on the same page. And then I think you got to get real with yourself and how unproductive you are. Let's say you're married and you have kids once your kids go to bed. We're very unproductive. Most families are extremely unproductive creatures. It's Netflix time, it's phone screen time. At best, you're reading, hopefully, maybe you're reading a novel, and you're not on your screens, but most of it's screen time, Netflix time, and movies time. And so to me, if your kids go to bed 7:30, 8 o'clock, most young kids, that's when they're going to bed, you have at least 2 to 3 hours that night. If you're going to, typically people are going to bed around that time for you to go build something for yourself. And
Mm,
I think it's the best way to invest your time as a couple is doing something in those evening times that's productive, that's forward focused, because otherwise we get caught in the past and we start becoming victims and we start thinking about all the things we don't have and where we're not because we're watching all these things on TV and social media of all these great things people are doing in their lives and
hmm.
get lost in that. So,
I like that you said this whole idea of having that wasted time at the tail end of the day. Where do people start, though? I think there are a lot of options out there. What would you recommend from your experience as a place to start? Or
well, listen, yeah. Well, listen, if you're listening to this podcast episode because you know because you're intrigued by the idea of being able to go build something for yourself. Maybe you met Frank, maybe you met myself, maybe you met somebody that knew one of us, right? I believe that's where it starts. I believe it not with a podcast episode. Where it starts is with a relationship with somebody. Because that's where it began for we sit here across from each other knowing that was the answer for us, right?
hmm
It was relationships in our life. It was people that had done things. And when I found about successful people who have truly, genuinely created financial freedom or financial success or on path to do that and aren't trying to just sell you a program or something to go buy, but they actually had created it successfully, they're very giving people.
mm,
They enjoy that because that's the impact we get to create in our life is being able to give back. And Frank, I know you have a massive heart for this, but you look at people as, man, I see so much potential in people. You're an
yeah.
extremely optimistic human being, actually to a fault sometimes, right? Almost too optimistic. You look past some of the details, which is something I mean, that's if that there's a bad trait, and if that's your worst trait, that's a pretty freaking good trait. Bad trait or whatever, double negative. But I think just being able to build relationships is a phenomenal starting point. And then just realizing that you're gonna have to grow a new skill set.
Mm,
Getting outside your comfort zone is the name of the game. We started this podcast, I don't even know, 2019, this Plain Injured podcast. I didn't even, I still, I still today have no idea how to upload a podcast onto any of the platforms. I don't know. But Josh does, my co-host. He figured all that out. And you don't have to be great at everything. Frank, wealth is built in building teams, and you've built organizations in your job, and you've built organizations through business, and you built organizations over in Africa. I mean, from all different levels. I mean, there are people that you know that are way smarter than you that are
yes,
part of your businesses, right? And part of your teams,
yes,
right? Way more skilled,
absolutely.
way more skilled than I don't think you'll be mad. Way more skilled than you are.
Yeah, that's true. I tell them all the time.
Yeah. But that's
Yes.
leadership. And that's also like a level of understanding where wealth comes from. Wealth doesn't come from you being really good at something and you being the expert or being really niche. Wealth
hmm
comes from you empowering other people, helping other people get to where they want to go.
Yeah. So something that I've also seen at times is that people, I think it's more of a shield than anything. The idea of like, oh, it has to be perfect, perfect time.
Mm,
Whatever I do, I have to be all in. Like if it's either I'm all in or I'm not, or it's perfect or I'm not doing it. Um, what have you seen as a way to overcome that and take an action rather than waiting for perfection? Because the idea that, well, if it's not the perfect business or it's the perfect business idea or it's the perfect time in my life, I've
Can I
seen it
tell
as
you?
a, go ahead. Yes.
I was just going to say, can I answer all three of those questions? I'm going to answer
Yes.
it. It's not the perfect business and it's not the perfect time and it's never going to be the perfect venture. It's never going to be the perfect time. It's never, the reality is that's never coming. And if you're waiting for it, you'll be waiting the rest of your life. And I truly believe that. So, what's the answer? The answer is do something. And the answer is do a little bit every day. A
Mm,
little bit. A little bit goes a long way. And especially when you're in the wealth development game. See, I think people attach scaling and building wealth or building ventures on the side like they do to their job.
mm,
They think I got to go to school for 4 years, in there, maybe subconsciously, but let's bring it to the conscious level. I got to go to school for 4 years and then I can start working. And then once I start working, I got to work for 40 hours a week. And then after 5 years, I'll be really good at my job and I can get promoted or whatever. Well, that's just not true in entrepreneurship and scaling side ventures. How do you do it? You get a little education, you build some really great relationships. Hopefully you find a mentor or somebody that can guide you down a path. Okay.
mm,
Take a buttload of action imperfectly that you suck at it. You navigate every season of your life with different schedules, kids come into the picture, different things are happening in your life, and you just do the little bits that you can along the way, and you learn a massive amount. And the payout, because you're building wealth, is every little bit counts. Why? The work I did 10 plus years ago is still paying me today in
mm,
entrepreneurship. In a job, the work I did 5 years ago, actually 5 hours ago, doesn't pay me anymore. It paid me only for that moment.
mm,
Wealth development, here's what's cool. You build little blocks and those blocks continue to produce. Um, and one of the best analogies for that is would I rather carry buckets of water to my home and try to build a business around, oh, I'm going to go help carry buckets of water or build a pipeline where I can just turn on the water and now I can put pipelines in everybody's home? Like, what am I actually building? And the difference between the way we think about building things on the side is build a pipeline. It's going to take some
mm.
time. But that's a little bit of at least the mindset. Is there anything else you want to shed light on that? Because I feel like maybe I missed the mark a little bit on that. I don't know if there's anything else.
No, I think you're spot on around the idea of building a pipeline. And doing a little, I loved when you made that comment about doing a little to start and not waiting for the perfect time because it never will be. Something is always going to come up. There's going to be some new development. Something is going to happen. What I've found is when you take little steps, and I'm a believer, so I believe that every time that I take little steps towards success, God gives me a layup because
Mm.
he realizes I'm actively working towards a purpose. I'm working towards something. And at times we all need that help. And people call it luck. I call it, it's like actively somebody noticing I'm taking steps towards that. So I just get in the helping hand. But when you are speaking, I mean, you've run businesses for over a decade now. How have you grown as a function of this? How have you grown as a man? How have you grown as a family man? How have you grown even in your career? How has this learning opportunity or running a business influenced different areas in your life?
It's funny. I can't really say that any of my growth that I had in corporate America was a function of what corporate America taught me, any programs they had, any conferences
Mm,
they sent me to. None of it came from there. And I'm not saying that there aren't companies that do a really good job of that. I just didn't have that experience. If I had to attest, the reason I grew in my career, it was because of what I did on the side.
mm,
It was because of the books I was reading. It was because of the association I had. It was because of the how much I was getting outside of my comfort zone every night of the week. And I was growing myself through developing myself in my own endeavors. And so many people I think are very binary in the way they think. They're like, oh, I'm either going to be an employee or I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I got to go all in on one of those. And I
Mm,
just think we live in a generation where if you're not flexible, if financial security and stability is not about one source, financial flexibility and security is about uh, skill, flexibility, and security. It's about you being flexible in the way you make money and having autonomy over that. And
mm.
so that's been a big piece. The other thing I think that's been really beautiful is growing my mental and emotional capacity.
Tell us, yeah, lean in a little bit in that. What does that mean in expanding your emotional and mental capacity?
How much I can handle today, how much chaos I can handle when the kids are crying and things aren't going well at home. If I don't know if I would be there mentally and emotionally if we hadn't built something on the side. Because when I was, there's been plenty of moments where we've just had to lean in and you don't have an option. And here's what I find. Most people, this is what I've seen. Most people, when it comes to their job, they'll show up emotionally broken, sick, tired,
Mm,
hungover, whatever, right? They'll go to their job still. True. Why?
yeah.
Because they're driven by a fear. Because if they don't show up, they get fired, they lose their paycheck. Okay. Then they start something on the side, or their family or their kids need them, and they're like, "Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I'm not feeling well," and they don't show
Mm.
up for their kids, their family, their wife, and their side ventures.
I love that you said that because I was listening to a podcast and they spoke about one of the best ways to really connect with your kids is spending time. And in relation to what you're saying, but if you're not present because you're not, you don't have the capacity, you're not going to be present when you're with your kids. But sorry, I just had to jump in and share that.
So true. Yeah. So what is it? And this is, I think, getting at a point here is that my values, what are my values? What's my value system? My value system is my family. My value system is my health. My value system is the way I treat people. Okay. How I show up for them. Well, what's the most important place I need to have it pinned? My family, my kids. So my mentality was, and excuse me on this if I'm offending anyone, but I'll call in sick to my job like that. Why? Because they pay me to not be there. They give me sick time
Mm,
so that I can show up for my family, my kids, and what we're building on the side. Why? Because that's the long-term play.
wow.
That's sticking. That's the sticky thing. The thing that's not sticky is the job. I can always go get a new job, and that job's going to quit me someday. That job's going to say, you don't belong here anymore. You're not needed here anymore. It might be when I'm in my late 60s, it might be tomorrow, right?
Mm.
But where do I want to put my mental and emotional energy? Really? So here's the question, and then maybe we should kind of land the plane here if you got anything else, Frank. But
I have one last question, but yeah, and then we can move. Yeah.
here's the question: why does the world teach us to go get full-time jobs and then live part-time marriages, part-time raising kids, part-time health?
Wow.
Why don't we flip it? Why don't we figure out ways to make money that provide for our family that are part-time, aka residual, passive, asset-based, ongoing, whatever you want to call it. There's so many words for it. And then live full-time marriages, full-time parents, full-time health journeys, full-time spiritual faith walks with your church or your faith or whatever you're into there. Why don't we flip it? I
Mm.
think if most people were to work towards flipping the equation sooner in their life, instead of doing it in their 60s, doing it in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I think there'd be less anxiety, less depression, because now we're living out our true values. And I believe the way God designed us.
Wow. Like hearing you speak to this, I feel this sounds like common knowledge, but I feel like a lot of people would hear this and it will be new to them. And part of it is because as a function of the people that I have associated with. And I love that earlier on you had spoken about associations. And then I had a question here around that. I was like, how do you know if you even have the right association by you? How do you find like the right people to associate with? Um, how do you know if you even need an association?
Yeah.
Or to associate with people?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I'll be pretty quick on it. Number one is assess the association with. And one of the best assessments that I was made aware of is what are they talking about? And what I mean by that is, are they talking about the past?
Mm.
If your association that you're hanging out with, and I know every culture is different, but I know the African culture, I've gotten to know your culture a little bit, Frank, likes to hang out and kind of just chill and just hang out and
Yep.
music and food and all day, right? Like nothing wrong with that. But what are they talking about? And if they're always talking about the past, here's an indicator. They're stuck in the past. And if you're the kind of person who wants to move forward, I'm assuming you're listening to this because you want to move forward in life, you want to be better, you want to create a better life for your family. You got to start surrounding yourself by people that speak future, that speak where we're headed, where we're going. And that not only, if you start speaking that, that will attract that into your life. If you start thinking forward, if you start, I believe in the power of manifestation and the fact that, hey, I think our relationships were a divine interaction, a divine work of God in our lives. But you and I were both, prior to meeting each other, thinking forward, where we want to go, what do we want to create? Like life can't be this, like it's got to be more.
Absolutely.
So I think that power of attraction. Um, and then I think you just really need to define relationships in your life. And for my wife and I, relationships are not built on quantity time. Relationships are built on quality time and quality of conversation.
Mm.
If the quality is there and if the quality conversation and the quality time is there, that's an opportunity to build a really strong relationships. Most of us have relationships in our life due to proximity and environment,
Mm.
where we worked, where we live, the school we went to, right? That is our association. The family we were born into, okay? But are you actively seeking? And I'll tell you it's uncomfortable. Frank, you meeting me and us becoming friends was uncomfortable, I'm sure. We're totally different, grew up totally different.
Yeah, you're right.
But the reality is that doesn't matter because what is the true line, meaning what is the one thing that no matter what culture you're from, no matter what background you're from, if there's a commonality in where we're going in our value system, it doesn't matter what all the other factors are. You even the board across cultures. The one thing we talk about often is that vision and a dream will surpass all cultures. It's
Yeah.
one thing if you go around the world and you talk about a vision and a dream and the life you want to create, every culture has that.
Wow.
So, dude, hey,
Wow. Yeah,
it's
this
been
has been
such a
great.
yeah, such a blessing to have you in my life. I'm just gonna say this as we land the plane here, Frank, is you're one of the best human beings, some of the most one of the most dependable people. I talk about often, um, we live in a society that doesn't follow through, that doesn't is afraid of commitment and afraid of really showing up and being honest and over the last decade that's you, that's just been you in my life, that's been you in not just my life, dozens and dozens of people's lives, that you've just been there, you've been stable, you've been consistent, imperfect, and I believe if you're somebody who's looking for what it means to be a father, a son, a friend, a business partner, um, a spiritual warrior. Frank Nyantekyi, you are the man for that, and it's an honor. I appreciate you so much that it's our job to get our kids around each other so we can influence each other's kids because of how much value there. So just respect you a ton, buddy, and thanks for coming on our show.
Thank you. Where can people find you, Mason?
Oh, that's a good question. Good luck. No, I think LinkedIn is probably my most kind of active platform that I use. And what about you, Frank? Is that kind of your
LinkedIn as well. I'm only on LinkedIn, actually. No, thanks for the opportunity, Mason.
you bet.